Chapter 26, practice problem number 1. And in this practice problem here, or in this exercise, we are to compute the annual net cash flow and also the payback period for both projects number 1 and number 2. And so in this chart here, we are provided with both of the projects' projected revenue here, which comes from the sales of the new product, and then also the projection of the total expenses here for materials, labor, and overhead, depreciation on the machinery, and selling, general, and administrative expenses. So when we take the revenues and subtract out the expenses, we'll get our income. Here is specifically net income for both of the projects here. And so for letter A, we are to convert this net income for both projects 1 and 2 into net cash flow. And these amounts that are shown here for projects 1 and 2 for revenues and expenses, these are annual amounts. So let's go ahead and start here for letter A. So for letter A, we're going to go ahead and take project number 1. Okay, so project number 1, we're going to start off with the revenue. And the revenue is going to be $100,000. Right, that's going to be included in the computation of annual net cash flow. Then we're going to go down to our expenses. This is where things are going to be a little different here. So again, our goal is to convert the net income into net cash flow. So this means that there could be some expenses that are categorized as non-cash expenses. Okay, so let's go down the line and figure out which one is, or which ones, could be plural, are classified as non-cash expenses. So we go to materials, labor, and overhead of $65,000. This is a legit expense that does affect cash. So we're going to go ahead and include this as a subtraction to the revenues here, $65,000. And that's coming from materials, labor, and overhead. Now we drop down to depreciation. So when it comes to depreciation, when you do record depreciation, you are recording the wear and tear on the usage of the machinery in this case. So when you do record depreciation, you're going to debit. Okay, debit depreciation expense. So in this case for 20,000, that's a debit, and then you're going to credit accumulated depreciation for that same amount. Okay, notice this entry here does not affect cash. You don't see a debit to cash or a credit to cash. So this is a non-cash expense. So when you are recording depreciation, you are recording the wear and tear on the usage of a machine or an equipment. You're just recording the wear and tear of it. So when it comes to recording depreciation, you are provided various methods to do just that. When you do use the methods, you're not affecting cash at all. So this means that the depreciation of $20,000 is not going to be included in the computation of net cash flow, since this is a non-cash expense. It doesn't affect cash. It does affect the calculation of net income because it is an expense account. But we're trying to get to the net cash balance or the net cash flow, which means that we have to make an adjustment to remove, or by removing, the depreciation expense in the computation of net cash flow. So we're not going to include it in here. Now the next one here is the selling, general, and administrative expense for $8,000. That's going to get included. So I'm going to put this as SG and A as an abbreviation here, and it's going to be for $8,000. Okay, so our net cash flow, this is annual, comes out to be $27,000. So notice the difference here for project one. The net income was $7,000, but for the net cash flow it's $27,000. That's because we did not include the depreciation, since depreciation is a non-cash expense. It doesn't affect cash. Now we're going to go to project 2, still on letter A. So we're going to take the revenues of 80,000, and then we're going to subtract out the materials, labor, and overhead. So we're going to include that. So that's going to be 32,000 as a subtraction. Then SG&A, the selling general administrative expenses, that's going to be a subtraction of 20,000. So the net cash flow comes out to be 28,000. Okay. Now we go to letter B. Now letter B, we have to figure out what the payback period will be for each project or for each investment. Now, in the scenario, we are provided with both the initial investment for project 1 and project 2. So the initial investment for project 1 comes out to be $135,000, and then the initial investment for project 2 comes out to be $98,000. So we need both of these amounts to figure out how many periods or years is it going to take to recover these initial investments for both of these projects. So to figure this part out, we're going to start with project number 1. Okay, so when it comes to calculating the payback period, we're going to take, I'm just going to put the formula on the left hand side here. We're going to take the initial investment, and we're going to divide it by, there we go, it wasn't letting me scroll, the net cash flow. That's going to give us our payback period. So for project 1, in a scenario, the initial investments was $135,000. And we're going to divide it by the net cash flow that was computed in letter A, which is 27,000. Okay, so the payback period for project 1 is going to be 5 years. So this is saying that if you do take on this project, it's going to take you 5 years to recover your initial investment, given the annual net cash flow of $27,000. So again, these are projections. Project 1 projection. Now we go to project 2. And we're going to take the initial investment from project 2. That comes out to be $98,000. And we're going to divide it by the 28,000 here from letter A. Okay, so that's going to give us 3.5 years or 3.5 years. So this is telling us that in order for us to recover $98,000 that's from the initial investment on project 2, it's going to take about 3.5 years because of, or due to, the annual net cash flow that is projected to be generated of $28,000.